as it's 11 o'clock, we're going to get started. So welcome to today's webinar on resolving conflict. Topic today, as you can see on the screen, is this juicy little cherub. And I'm your host, Bob Hayward, supported by my beautiful assistant, James, otherwise known as Jim.
I'll be in the background just doing the chat and the Q&A. I'll see you later, Bob.
Thank you very much, Jim. Appreciate your support. And talking about the chat, do remember to change the chat settings so that you communicate with all attendees and the panelists if you wish to send a more generalized message. If you want to send a specific message to the hosts, myself or Jim, then I personally put it to Jim because I'm kind of busy at the moment. Now, my promise to you today, apart from hopefully a good time and finish on time, is that you're going to get some tools for talking when the stakes are high. Some of those tools are mindset tools. Some of them are conversational tools. Some of them are the way we think and the way we behave. Because if we change our mindset, we can change our behavior or our approach. And if we change our behavior and we change our approach, then we're going to change the results we get. In addition, there will be some ways to handle things when emotions get a little bit too strong. Now, did you like what I did there? Handle, George Handel, Messiah. Look, the jokes are not going to get any better, so you might as well laugh now. In addition, we're going to look at some ways to reach alignment when things that really matter are on the table. And alignment is not the same as agreement, which hopefully we'll talk a bit about later. In addition, there's going to be one lucky winner of a huge prize worth over £1,000 and a special offer for those that complete the exit survey. So if you complete the exit survey either today, immediately at the end of the webinar, or tomorrow when the link is sent out automatically a second time, there's a huge 50% discount offer and some very, very generous offers. Extras. Please keep a notepad and a pen or your computer close to hand, a Word document, your keyboard, a pad, a pen. There's going to be at least 45 ideas and lessons embedded in this next hour. If you record some of those ideas and act on some of those ideas quickly in the next few days, you will get some real value from this hour. If you listen and take some action, then you'll probably still get some value. Not as much as if you write them down and actually determine what are the 3 or 4 or 5 things you're actually going to do. But if you absorb it and it happens, happy days. Of course, if you take no record of the event and no action afterwards, then probably you've had a nice mid-morning break. So what do we mean by conflict? Well, not necessarily the playground antics that we probably were a part of when we was a little boy or a little girl. Mind you, our mums probably did have some great advice for us as youngsters, young chaps or chapesses. In those playground tiffs, our mums probably said, you know, make friends, play nicely, share together. And those things actually would help us even now. Workplace conflict is a state of discord, a place of disagreement, a place of tension. And it's caused by either actual or perceived opposition in terms of needs or values or interests between people who are working together. This is a place of darkness. It's a place where things either said or unsaid disturb us. And of course, regret and guilt and revenge are all poisons that kill us, rarely, if ever, the other person involved in that conversation or place. My own view is that our definition could probably do with a little expansion and include those situations where or when we cannot, for either an internal reason, as Jim was intimating as we started, or an external reason, a reason due to other people or the situation we're in itself, you know, we just cannot put our whole self into a conversation. We cannot find a way to really fully engage with the decision-making process with our colleagues, our bosses, our customers, our suppliers. And if we cannot put our wholesales in, then we're really not going to get a great answer out of it. So we're looking for significant insights and significant tools that can enable us to, with passion, have a debate and work hard at creating the best possible decisions and solutions. It's not about a false sense of harmony where nobody says what they really think or feel. That's not the place we want to go. But we've got to be able to have a passionate debate which uplifts others rather than disempowers others. So what does conflict cost? Well, inappropriate decisions like the one on the screen. You know, if you cannot put your whole self into a conversation, we are going to end up with poor decisions. You know, low trust environments or no trust environments, it just doesn't allow that productive, passionate debate, that productive paranoia where we talk over things that we see going well and going wrong. If we make poor decisions, we miss deadlines, we have low productivity, we have low quality, we don't get committed to results, we don't achieve what we set out to achieve. And that includes the kind of involuntary departures from project teams and from companies. You know, people leave because of they really don't feel trusted. They really don't feel part of the culture. They can't find a way to fit in. They're frustrated by that low trust environment or the fact that they cannot talk freely. They get frustrated because they can't see the results happening. We can lose customers that way. We can dispense with suppliers that way because we're just unable, internal and external reasons, to actually engage fully in that conversation. And of course, another significant cost is the increase in stress. And that can come through in short-term sickness being increased, even long-term absenteeism. Got a client at the moment who's got an employee who's been coming back and going off sick, coming back and going off sick, coming back and going off sick, and no one's been prepared to tackle it. You know, that is an issue. The performance in the business is impacted by that. It's quite an important role. Of course, we might perceive someone being lazy, and that perception could cost that relationship dearly. And there can be grievances that evolve, and you end up in disputes because of that. Resolution, arbitration, negotiation, legal costs. Yeah, these are really places of darkness. Yeah, even if it's, I don't want to say the word just, even if personal stress is the only cost, that is a significant cost. And that is a genuine place of darkness, which light can release if we can get that light in or allow that light in. And hopefully what we're talking through today will enable us to shift our mindset, shift our behaviors, and get a different result. So where does conflict come from? What are the root causes? Well, if we can get around our head around the main root causes, then we can change our approach. And one of those root causes is opposing opinions. Often it's the kind of first root cause, the deepest root cause that really kicks this thing off. And where we have opposing opinions, they can really unsettle the apple cart. So how do opposing opinions occur? Because if we can get our heads around that, then we may have a chance to change the game completely. Well, you might have seen this. It started on the 26th of February in 2015 and went viral. There's an image on the screen of a dress. And the debate was on social media, Twitter and Facebook and various other places, is the dress gold and white or is it black and blue? And millions, literally, of people argued and debated whether that dress was gold and white and black or blue. So in the chat, Please write down what you see. Do you see a blue and black dress, or do you see a gold and white dress? Or can you see both? Which one can you see? Black and blue. Black and blue. There's nothing wrong with my eyesight. Black and blue, gold and white on the left-hand side, and black and blue on the right. Black and blue, gold and white, both. Gold and white. It's a whole variety of answers. The black and blue dress, because it was a black and blue dress, was an unintended consequence. They didn't kind of realize that people would look at that dress in a slightly different way, with a slightly different light, with a slightly different camera angle, slightly different perception inside their own brain, and all those factors, internal and external, combined to cause an unintended consequence, that some people could only see a gold and white dress and some people could only see a black and blue dress, when in fact it was one dress, black and blue. And unintended consequences, foot and mouth and brain, engage the right one first. These things can be the precipitating factor in causing opposing opinions. It may also be reasonably obvious from this image. You know, is it a 6 or is it a 9? Our point of view changes our opinion. A different point of view generates a different potential "I'm correct in my mind" opinion. And perception is projection. A slightly different insight could change that perception. Otherwise, we are trapped in our perceptions and our beliefs. And so is everybody else. Our perceptions are like a pair of glasses. Our perceptions non-consciously create filters, and the filters non-consciously reject all things they see and hear that disagree with those perceptions. We have to work incredibly hard to reduce or remove or change those filters or those scratches. If we can, then our mindset changes, our behavior changes, and the results change. Here's a filter that I adopted some years back when I was struggling. This new filter enabled me to inquire more about others than I had done in the past. It enabled me to support others more than I had done in the past. And it enabled me to criticize or blame people less than I'd done in the past. So it's one of the significant tools we have to take on board, in my view. Please consider it for yourself. You know, what are some of the filters that might be worthwhile you considering challenging? Once we have opposing opinions, then it's fairly easy for emotions to kick in. And while a difference of opinion may or may not be enough to cause conflict on its own, once you add this little cherub, strong emotions, in, well, now you have a different matter. I mean, we are adults and we are at work, aren't we? So why would emotions get the better of us? They wouldn't, would they? Are you human? Hello? Yes. Then they will. Let's think through this scenario. A friend, one of your good friends, out walking, socially distanced, passes you on the other side of the street without saying hello. In the chat, please write down, when that happens, what do you instinctively think and feel? A friend walked past you on the street without saying hello. I've been snubbed, miserable person. What's on their mind? Have I upset them? They didn't see me. They're just off in their world. I didn't have the correct glasses on, or they didn't. we just don't know. They must be having a bad day. It's my bonnet. They didn't like it. Didn't you see? Or maybe they didn't have to see. Now I'm concerned for them. Are they okay? I'm worried about them. Okay. Whole variety of instinctive reactions. And that's what happens. All that happened was the friend walked past us on the street without saying hello. That was the fact. Now we've gone and made up a story. What we've said is, she's worried. She's ignoring me. She's upset. She's upset with me. She's having a bad day. She thinks I'm having a bad day. And either chemicals get into our system and we feel worried, and then we interpret the event and those chemicals, and we end up thinking, wow, she's ignoring me. I've upset her. She's angry with me. Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. Sometimes it happens the other way around, that the thought comes first. We can argue with the psychologist later. Either way, we have made up a story. We have interpreted an event, and that interpretation is what can do the damage, both to us and ourselves, because that interpretation, that story we've just told ourselves, now changes the relationship we have with the other person. And if we're not careful, we engage in a conversation with that person from that perception, and we could, as an unintended consequence, end up in conflict. The situation or the event that delivers the opposing opinion may set up unintended instant interpretations in our mind. We may get emotionally hooked by the story we tell ourselves. We often do ourselves the most damage. I have a client who's fairly senior in a company, who's in a disagreement with another board member and just got hooked emotionally that this person was trying to undermine them. And there was just one way of looking at it. The meaning that was given by my client to everything that other person said just made it really difficult from a mental health point of view for that relationship to continue, until we just talk this through. That actually, my dear friend, my dear client, you are telling yourself a story, and it's you telling yourself that story that is causing the problem. If we change our mindset, we can change our behavior. If we can change our behavior, we'll change the results we get. So what's the third causative factor? Well, when stakes are high, when the results are really important, be that status or power or face or money, then when those stakes are high, when we're playing for even a greater game, then that third factor can make a huge difference. And when these three things come together, there is a significant risk of a tough conversation. There's a significant risk of conflict. So we really need to think carefully just how about we're going to approach these things. One thing that we need to think about right now is, what is the main goal of communication anyway? What do we want? What do we really, really want, as the Spice Girls used to say? You know, what do we want out of communication? Because so many things go unsaid, are non-conscious in this whole scenario. Our goals might be unsaid. Our intent is often unspoken, unthought through. And we can produce so many unintended consequences just because our intentions are not clear to ourselves or others. And that's about the goals that we set for communication. So I'm going to open a poll. Which of the following multiple choice answer would you consider to be a healthy or an effective goal? 65% voted, 66%. Lots of people saying learn, understand, solve problems. 85% voted. Give it a few more seconds. Okay. Let's have a look at those results. The winner being to create shared understanding, and I totally agree with that. The central purpose of communication has to be to create, in my view, a shared mutual understanding. If we have that as our central goal, things change. Watch out for this little cherub though. 19% of people have scored to avoid conflict. That is actually an unhealthy goal. It is better to resolve the conflict. Unresolved conflict causes us problems and is not, in fact, a healthy goal. We'll talk more about that in a minute. So, let's look at those healthy and unhealthy goals. As you can see, avoid conflict is on that unhealthy side of the equation. To learn, to discover, to produce, to strengthen relationships, to create that shared mutual understanding, all of that is the real juicy stuff. We need to be careful of allowing the unhealthy goals on the left-hand side to creep in to our intentions, because it has unintended consequences. So here's our central goal for all communication. Central goal of mutually calibrated understanding. And it's worth thinking about some of the situations where you may be stuck at work, you know, because of poor effort or poor quality or annoying meetings or over management or under management by you or others, poor teamwork, failure to deliver, mistrust, because maybe we haven't got that as a central goal as part of those relationships or that communication. Maybe we've got a little bit of avoiding conflict in there amongst other things, which could be skewing it. Maybe you've got some relationships where people are annoying you. Maybe you've got someone who insults you. Maybe you're insulting someone without realizing it. We never know. It's worth thinking through. This has to be our central goal. And if we're not careful, we forget that we can't reach that goal unless we feel safe in that conversation and that relationship. You know, if we can't put our whole selves into a conversation, if we can't put our whole self into a relationship, if we can't speak as passionately as we want to about a topic because we're afraid of upsetting someone, because we're trying to avoid conflict, or we're forcing our views on others and not allowing them to have a passionate debate, you know, whether we are attacking or being attacked, then that's not a safe place. And if we cannot feel safe, one way or another, we ain't going to put the whole self in. And what tends to happen is people become either verbally silent or verbally violent. And there are extremes of those. And they begin in a very silent and odd way occasionally. I mean, maybe somebody in your team has fallen silent. Maybe they don't speak as often as they did. Maybe someone's been doing a bit of pouting and folding of arms. And, you know, if we could learn to recognize some of the early trends, then we wouldn't have to end up in a real heated debate that is undermining and disrespecting the people in the conversation or in the room. You know, a stitch in time saves 9. Back to lessons from mum and the playground. You know, if we can repair something early before it goes too far off track, then it actually takes less time, less effort, less energy, less money usually. So learning to recognize if we've got the beginnings of someone going silent or the beginnings of someone becoming violent, we've got a chance to act and nip it in the bud. So what are the signs of violence that precede the actual outburst? Well, there could be things like controlling or coercing the conversation, cutting other people off, repeating our views constantly, maybe forcibly changing the subject, or labeling things so that obviously nobody else would agree with that idea because you've stereotyped or categorized the idea. And so you've changed the perception of its value and its attractiveness. Maybe you belittle the idea or the person. Maybe there's a bit of name calling. Any of these can make somebody feel attacked. And we may not realize that the labeling, that's a crazy idea. What made you think of that? Could actually be taken as verbal violence. It could be the beginnings of conflict, because somebody else is going to make up a story about what you've just said, and that story is what hurts them. We don't see it in that way. It was only a bit of banter. It was only a laugh. What's the matter with them? Maybe we've got to look for signs of verbal silence, where masking of ideas comes into play, because we're selectively stating things and leaving things out. Maybe we're putting a bit of sugar on the outside and cut it up into small pieces so that they'll be able to swallow them. Maybe just avoid the topic or walk around the handbags and try not to address it, or say, let's take that offline. You know, that's not the place for the meeting. We won't talk about that in this meeting. Let's take it offline. It doesn't always help. Withdrawing or pulling out of conversations, steering other people away, are not particularly healthy places. So let's go for a poll. Now, in this poll, there are 2 questions. So please stay with question 1 in the first instance, rather than scrolling all the way down to question 2. Start with question 1. Question 1 is about verbal violence. Question 2, which comes second, is about verbal silence. And I will show the next slide when we're ready to move to that side of the poll. So, call up the poll and launch it. You now should see the poll. Please answer the first one first, the first question first. Which of these are early signs of verbal violence? Multiple choice. Oh, some of you have sneaked into the second question. The second question I'll show on the screen as well then. Oops, too far. What are the early signs of verbal silence, and what are the early signs of verbal violence?
So Bob, it's on the poll. You have to answer both questions to be able to press submit.
Ah, do you? That's an interesting lesson for us all.
Thanks, Will, for that.
Thank you. Yes, I'll remember that in future and do them as 2 separate polls. I've given you a big job to do, but you're doing it so well. 50% people voted now. Who knew on a webinar you'd be asked to do some work? Participation is a wonderful thing. %70 voted.
Shall I sing a song in the background, Bob?
Well, it's quite interesting because we listened to feedback from our previous delegates who said it's better to be quiet when we're asking them to do polls and questions, which surprised me because I thought they wouldn't like the silence. 83 have now voted, so we'll end the poll. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Share the results. So what are early signs of verbal violence? Cutting other people off mid-sentence, belittling them, dismissing their ideas, sarcasm, overstating our opinions. Absolutely well spotted. What are some of the early signs of verbal silence? Changing the subject. Now, pouting's an interesting one. We'll come back to that in a second. Withdrawing from the conversation, masking our feelings, leaving things unsaid, but looking frustrated. So those interesting, that behavior, that pouting, that looking frustrated, is that actually verbal violence or verbal silence? Because so much of our conflict could be exacerbated by our behavior. Our behavior, our non-verbal communication can be hugely influential. Whether that's an eyebrow or a look, a grunt, a pout, a folded arms, they could be signs of verbal violence. A pout and a looking frustrated could be deemed to be aggressive. Just because it's a non-verbal communication sign doesn't mean that it's a sign of silence. And if we train ourselves to look for these early signs, if you've begun to do by completing those polls today, and you've got the vast majority of them spot on, then we can see these things as an early sign, and we can change course of the conversation. If we can change our course of the conversation, then maybe we can engage in a passionate debate and uplift people that are involved, and therefore drive out better solutions and better decisions. How do we do that? There's a 3-step model to help you do that. When things get tough, when verbal violence and verbal silence starts to occur, hopefully you spot it as early as possible. Then you can get stuck in with these 3 steps to solve the situation and resolve the conflict. Watch for the early signs, but when you see them, when you hear them, step 1, step out of content. Hello, it's not working. If you carry on with the content, trying to get your argument across or whatever, it's just gonna get worse. Stop it. What we need to do as part of stepping out of content is reflect on our own intent. Now I'm going to ask you some rhetorical questions. There's no need to answer them. How does changing our motive affect how we feel and how we think? How does changing our intentions shift how we see others? How does our shift in attitude affect our response and other people's response? Because it will come out. We emanate that intent. Our intent is given meaning by others. It creates a perception by others. So we need a stepping out of content to reflect on our intent. As part of stepping out of content, we need to check in with ourselves. Am I telling myself facts or stories? Did my friend really ignore me? Or was it that she didn't see me? And what really was the fact? What were the visible and audible facts as opposed to my chemical reaction and my emotions? Did I start telling myself a story where I'm the victim, an innocent victim, where somebody else is a villain and did bad things to me, like ignoring me as they walk down the street? Or do I try and convince myself in these situations sometimes that there's just nothing else I could do? I mean, it wasn't my fault. There was nothing else I could do. I was just helpless. These are 3 very common stories we tell ourselves when we're struggling with situations and the beginnings of conflict. And if we step out of the content and reflect on what we're telling ourselves alongside of reflecting on our intent, then maybe we can listen a little bit better to the stories we're telling ourselves and get back to the true facts, the visible and audible facts. That's step 1, step out of content. It helps handle things when emotions are strong. The earlier you step out, the better. But if emotions go from 0 to nuclear, it's still the best first step. Step out of content, and then we can start to recover. Why? Because step 2 is to rebuild the safety around what's required as the ultimate goal, the mutual calibrated understanding. So step 2 is to rebuild safety. We have to show we care about their interests, the other person's interests, their best interests, their goals, their objectives, what they're passionate about. And we have to show that we care more about them than probably anything else. We have to often create a mutual purpose, or at least clarify the mutual purpose, remind them of the mutual purpose if it was there already. But authentic conversations cannot begin until mutual purpose exists. Without mutual purpose, people withhold the things they want to say. They withhold meaning, or they go overboard with it. Mutual purpose is fundamental to the development of trust. Authentic conversations require us to build that mutual purpose. And sometimes, in order to rebuild safety, we've got to create purpose. If it's not been there before, how do we create purpose? Well, point out that you're at cross purposes. Why not? It's pretty obvious to them, even if it's unsaid. So say it, make it visible, get it out from under the table, then work on a commitment, say, verbalize. I'm totally committed to find a common reason for talking this through, to have a common objective. Ask for their intent, ask for their purpose, and then explore your own once they've explained theirs. Listen first before you try it to be understood. Stephen Covey. Create, on the basis of that joint dialogue, a mutual goal or conversation. Brainstorm a way that you could then work together to achieve that mutual purpose, that goal. And we have a completely different scenario on our hands. Now, sometimes to rebuild safety, it's not about mutual purpose. It's actually about mutual respect. So sometimes a part of rebuilding safety is proving that you actually care about the other person. Because without mutual respect, there is no safety. When mutual respect is violated, something very different takes over. We get into defending dignity and scoring points and lots of other dark things. So please think, okay, do I have to rebuild a mutual purpose, or do I need to rebuild respect? And sometimes, yes, sometimes, in order to rebuild genuine respect, then we need to apologize. We need to prove to them that that person, their relationship, is more important to us than being right, getting an answer, producing a result. Because while we cannot talk ourselves out of things we've behaved ourselves into, an authentic apology is authentic behavior and can significantly help. You know, the biggest distance between two people is often misunderstanding. So sometimes we've got to rebuild safety by establishing a common purpose. Sometimes we've got to apologize and rebuild respect. Sometimes actually there is a genuine misunderstanding and we've got to dig ourselves out of that misunderstanding. So here is a really powerful conversational tool. With this conversational tool, you can create a way out of the misunderstanding. It's got me out of so many topics because sometimes, yes, I'm human, I goof and I end up in conflict. So how can you use this tool called a contrasting statement to get out of trouble? Well, a contrasting statement is a statement which starts with what you don't want to achieve. We explain to the other person what we don't want to do. Look, I am not trying to upset you. I'm not trying to put you in the wrong. I'm not trying to make you look bad. Whatever it is that is going on at that time that you can bring from under the table and put on the top. Let's get it out. Let's say it. That's what I am not trying to do. And once we've covered what we're not trying to do, we can explain what we are trying to do. But my real intention here, in addition to honoring you, is to challenge the way we're thinking about this. So I am not trying to upset you. I am trying to get us to produce a better decision by getting us both to think this through. And yes, I'm being passionate. That passion's not there to undermine you. That's not what I'm trying to do. What I'm trying to do is explain how passionately I feel about it. These contrasting statements can make a huge difference. So, 3-step solution: step out of content, rebuild safety, prove mutual respect, prove mutual purpose, use contrasting statements. And when you have rebuilt safety, then you can step back into the content, because now the conversation's safe once more. Now people can contribute fully. So the ways to handle things when emotions are too strong. Step 1, step out of content. Step 2, make it safe. Step 3, okay, now we can go back into content, but we do need to test as we go. Remember, the purpose of our communication is to increase the collaboration of understanding, not to convince somebody, not to compel somebody, not to control somebody, not to save ourselves from a bit of pain now, only to be in pain more later. Our purpose is to create the collaboration. Oh, need a little drink. My lips are getting dry. Remember, that's our purpose. And if we sense that it is still not safe, then we need to step out of content again. Rebuild safety and get to a place where people do believe they can genuinely and authentically put their whole self and their whole views into the conversation while uplifting you or the others in that meeting or that conversation. So a poll coming to help you think. Where might you be stuck? Where might there be some things going on in work, in life, where you could actually be in an unsafe conversation and therefore stuck? It's an anonymous survey. Feel free to think and to answer. %50 of people have now voted. Under and over managing looks like it's leading the pack, along with holding back or blowing up.
Just while we're waiting on that, Bob, I do have a couple of questions in the Q&A. Thank you all that have participated so far. We will deal with those at the end, which is not too far away, I don't believe. Thanks, Bob.
Bless you, bless you. Okay, 80% voted now, so we're going to end the polling and share the results. So the winner is situations where we either hold back or blow up, followed very closely by over or under managing ourselves, or the bosses over or under managing us. Fascinating. Really, lots of us in annoying meetings, seeing projects stalled, where things are not being delivered, where there's false harmony in the team, where there's mistrust in the team. Wow, thank you. These are real life, real business situations, and actually using these tools to change our mindset, to change our behavior, will change the results. You know, it doesn't make sense to avoid conflict. What makes sense is to resolve the conflict. Thank you. So remember, the only limit to how strongly we can express our views is our willingness to equally vigorously defend the rights of others, to challenge our views and propose alternatives. The definition that we started with, that was far more inclusive in dealing with resolving conflict, is to think of all those internal and external reasons that cause us to not be able to put our whole self into a conversation or a decision-making process. And that includes situations where we end up with false harmony, because that's just an example of low trust. or a place where there is people who are trying to usurp power or position or influence in some unfair way, because it's disrespecting the person rather than uplifting them. What we want is to be able to passionately debate things and uplift others. So please, in the quiet, still mind, think, what are some of the most important insights that you've picked up today? And if you feel courageous, and hopefully you do, feel that you're in a safe place, because it's anonymous anyway, put some or one of those lessons in the chat box. Create safety. Everyone does the very best that they can. Thank you. Choose a positive filter to change your perspective. Step out and reflect. Rebuild safety. Oh, the chat's not anonymous. Sorry about that. Oh dear. That was a poo, an oopsie, sorry. Interrupting is verbal violence. Yes, not always eagerness. You're quite right. Thank you. To increase the collaboration of mutual understanding. Those are great goals. The don't do messages. Yeah, I love contrasting statements. I'm not trying to do this. I am trying to do this. Yes, there is viable violence and verbal silence in lots of meetings. Self-awareness. Loads of things there. So thank you so much for participating. Time for questions. Jim, what questions do we have?
Brilliant job as always. Thank you, Bob, for that. And there's just a couple of questions that have come in. Will we be sending the follow-up email and giving all sorts of other resources? Well, yes, we will. There will be a copy of the presentation that Bob's used today and the links to the sources.
And there's even more for those who complete the exit survey. Woohoo!
Okay, Frederick has got a question. How do you step out of content without being abrupt?
The simplest model that I've come across, which I think deals with it most of the time, is called name, praise, change. So name is the name of the other person. Jim, and if I say Jim in a reasonable tone of voice, then Jim's brain is engaged whether he likes it or not, because he's been trained since the year dot to respond to the name Jim, provided that's the name of the person you're talking to, of course. Name, praise. You've just broken rapport with them. You have the potential to upset them. So say something complimentary, say something authentic and polite and respectful that shows that what they're saying is reasonable in some way, shape or form. You don't have to agree with everything they said, but we do have to give them a bit of a hug verbally so that we soften that break in rapport, because we have interrupted them, let's be honest. Name gets their attention, praise gives them a cuddle, change. Now ask them a question. Ask them a question first rather than speak. Ask them to dig a little bit deeper, to explain why rather than the what that probably came out of their mouth. Your question will control their thinking. The question is your brain control mechanism. So if you think that question through well, you'll be able to actually get them to self-discover what's really going on. Name, praise, change. Hopefully that helps.
That's brilliant. Thank you for that answer to Frederick's question there, Bob. And there's another kind of follow-up question on the back of that one from Scott. Is there ever a time when stepping out is not enough? How long should it last?
I mean, sometimes, well, there's little point in stepping out if you're not going to attempt to rebuild safety, because to step out without rebuilding safety is to withdraw from the conversation. That's verbal silence. So if the goal is mutual calibration of understanding, then that's preeminent. So the intent is to re-engage from the very get-go. How long can it take? to build safety is a bigger question rather than how long should I step out. Yes, I'm asking you in stepping out to reflect. Am I telling myself a story that's doing me and the other person harm? Is my intention clear? That may take a few seconds. It may take a few minutes. It may be that you need a break. Okay, I need to go to the loo. I know we're right in the middle of something. Jim, name, phrase. You've brought some really challenging concepts to the table. I appreciate that. I need a wee-wee. Please, just give me a break. I need to go to the toilet. Get yourself 5 minutes, get yourself 6, 7 minutes, and then come back and start to rebuild safety. Any more than that means you're not coming back, really. And so you've gone verbally silent, in my view. Hopefully that's a reasonable answer.
Okay, and please feel free to come back to us, people, at any point in time. And as Bob says, we will be sending out follow-up material and resources to you to build on and embed this great learning that Bob shares. Another question here from Laura. When people are rambling, that doesn't happen surely. When people are rambling and
no labeling there,
rambling and going off the point in meetings, how do you politely take control of this again?
Personally, I'd stick with name, praise, change rather than insert another tool. If someone's going off track, then call them by name, give them a hug, a verbal hug, some kind of compliment, ask a question. Actually, you don't even have to say, oh, I think we're going off track here, because you're just labeling. And that could start an unintended chain of events. So if we go name, praise, ask the question, which is kind of the next point on the agenda, then your question controls their thinking and their behavior far better than any statement you can make. So, learning to use questions to direct other people and guide other people is a very powerful technique. So I'd stick with name, praise, change. And the change, remember, is asking an intelligent question to get it back on track without the need for labeling, oh, I think we're off track here.
Yeah, exactly, Bob. And all I could add to, because you mentioned Stephen Covey, as you know, he was a mentor of mine for many years. And he talked about the way we can accelerate. In fact, I made a note from what you were saying about unresolved conflict. It reminded me of that fabulous statement that, unresolved conflict is much like unexpressed emotion. It doesn't die, it gets buried alive, and it'll come back in uglier ways. That's silence or violence. Yes. So anyway, we can build the emotional bank account with the parties involved through the praising, through the recognition, through the whatever it is to build that trust back up to a level where they do feel safe, so that you can have authentic and truly open and honest conversations is a real catalyst for that. Yeah,
very true. Very true. Thanks, Jim.
And I don't think we've got any others from here. There was one thing that you were going to pick up, Bob. There was something in the session that you mentioned earlier that maybe you covered it.
No, I meant to put this slide deck in earlier, but I cheated and left it out, hoping that somebody might ask a question about it. We do have to think about what we're aiming at with our calibration of mutual understanding. So it's a little bit more in-depth analysis of what our real goal is around that mutual calibration. And alignment sometimes is more than sufficient rather than agreement. And our goal really is to get that yellow quadrant to be larger, and we get it to be larger by building trust and mutual respect. And therefore far more can be done where we're aligned with others, and we don't kind of have to put it in black and white and get people to sign in blood that they actually agree. Agreement really we can reserve to the places of high risk where there is less trust. If we can get the trust up, then having people working alongside each other, less constrained by such tighter forms of agreement, is far more effective. So thank you, Jim. Any final questions before I start to wrap up?
No, that's it for today, Bob.
Okay, so the huge special offer. Oh, I forgot. Did I warn you? You've got to pick a prize winner. There is a prize draw, Jim.
Oh, crikey. Okay.
Oh, I just thought I didn't warn you about it earlier on.
Right, I've got one.
Okay, so There's huge special offer. What's the huge special offer? Well, the huge special offer is some skills training via Zoom for up to a group of 12 people, 4 90-minute sessions, and you're basically 1,900. It'll be 967. So that's the special offer. You can pick the topic for the skills training because the team of associates that we have here can pretty much deliver on any business related skill. The lucky draw, Jim, who's our lucky draw prize winner? Because they're going to get a free 90-minute skill Zoom training session, one 90-minute session for up to 12 people. Who's the lucky winner?
Well done. The lucky winner today is, drum roll please, Cheryl Pym.
Woohoo! Well done. And for all those that complete the exit survey, you are entitled to a free copy of the ebook Persuade and a physical copy of the new book Remote Working. I have 100 copies that I ordered and can give away. So if you want a free copy of the hard book, the soft book, the paperback of Remote Working, then fill in the exit survey, make sure I've got your postal address, and we will get that sent off to you in the near future. And of course, as ever, Jim and I, as well as the other team of associates who are helping us with the Thoughts on Thursday webinars, are available for 30-minute chats. And they are completely free of any sale, and they're completely free of any cost. So if you are in any way struggling or stuck in certain relationships or teams, or you've got some of those issues and today's contents provoke some thinking but not quite enough, then of course feel free to reach out to us. Jim, what have we got coming up next week on our webinar next week? I'm just trying to think what the topic is.
You caught me on the hop there, Bob. Because
yes, I've caught myself on the hop.
My diary isn't to hand here.
It's not you then. I think it must be. Is it Walter? Is it Walter with empathy?
Well, if it is, it will be fabulous.
Maybe Richard or
empathy styles with Walter next week.
Yes,
brilliant topic.
Oh,
So you bring other friends and colleagues as well. Recommend it on LinkedIn.
He did a great session on emotional intelligence a few weeks back, and there were so many comments in the feedback from people wanting to know more about how you read someone's emotional intelligence styles without having to get them to fill in a questionnaire. So we're bringing Walter back to give us a more in-depth study of emotional intelligence, and in particular the model called empathy. So thank you for so much for being part of our session today. Genuinely, it's been a pleasure and an honor to be part of your journey, and we look forward to engaging with you more over the next few weeks. Bye now.
Bye now.
This has been a Thoughts on Thursday webinar production from Be More Effective. For more information, go to bemoreeffective.com. Remember, be more, do more, create more.